Welcome to the March 2023 Star Wars Canon Update. Last month was huge, with the return of The Mandalorian, the end of the second season of The Bad Batch, 2 new books, and 15 new comic issues, so let's get started. The Mandalorian has returned with its first 5 episodes. They were all enjoyable and fun to watch, but man did I love seeing a mythosaur in the flesh for the first time. And we're finally starting to get some much-needed context surrounding the New Republic, and you've gotta love Keller and Beck becoming Grogu's savior. But if you're watching this video, I'm gonna assume you keep up with the show on your own. If you want to see my reviews, I've got them all uploaded, but I'm gonna move on. While The Mandalorian returned, The Bad Batch wrapped up its second season with some stellar episodes. We finally followed up on the Zillo Beast cloning project from about 13 years ago, The Outpost was all around amazing, Pabu was beautiful, and the build-up to the emotional finale that I am still recovering from. It was a great end to the season, and we had better get a Season 3 announcement at Celebration. But again, I assume you have seen the series for yourself, so let's move on to books. Star Wars Jedi Battle Scars was the new novel release that bridges the gap from Fallen Order to Survivor. If you're a fan of the first game, I think you'll find a lot to enjoy about this book, especially if you're a fan of Marin's, and really, who isn't? She gets a heavy focus in the story. As far as larger canon goes, there isn't a ton of galaxy-affecting plot to talk about, it's more character-centric, but it excels at that. The crew basically stops the Empire from recovering a cloaking device. I'd recommend reading this if you're impatiently waiting for Star Wars Jedi Survivor to come out. I'll link to my full review as well as an interview with author Sam Maggs in the cards. If you're interested in picking up the book for free on Audible, you can by following the link in the description or by visiting audibletrial.com/Star Wars Explained. Hunter's Battle for the Arena also came out as a middle-grade tie-in story for Star Wars Hunters, a video game that's been delayed several times, and it was fine. It definitely felt a bit like an ad for the game at times, discussing all the game modes and characters. It felt pretty basic in its lessons, but it is a book for middle schoolers, and the themes were about imposter syndrome and believing you are worthy of friendship, so they were relevant for the age group. I will say that I enjoyed the rationalization for all the over-the-top characters in the battle arena, kind of a canon version of what the gameplay will represent, and that rationalization is that they're all basically professional wrestlers with personas. The Sith Lord character isn't really a Sith Lord, nobody is really trying to kill one another. I did enjoy that aspect, but I certainly didn't think this was a must-read book. Moving into comics, The High Republic issue 6 continued to be great. I think it's my favorite storytelling in Phase 2 so far. Vildar Mack is trapped in a collapsing building with several members of the Path of the Open Hand who are both blaming the Jedi for their predicament while also begging him to use the Force now that it can save their lives. Seeing some of them start to change their mind about the Jedi was a good, hopeful moment, and Vildar holds out long enough for the Guardians of the Wills to arrive and offer their faith in the Force and in him, which is just the boost he needs to save everyone. It was a great moment. The High Republic issue 7 kept up telling the more complete story of the Battle of Jedha. We learned the entire riot and all the violence was a cover for the Path of the Open Hand to find the Rod of Daybreak, which was apparently hidden inside the massive Jedi statue first seen in Rogue One. They riled up protesters who brought it toppling down so they could then search for the rod. I like that they're starting to look like the Nile, but I didn't like that one of them killed Olivia, especially before we could get the full story of her relationship with the mother. The third issue of The Blade continued to be really cool. I like that we're getting to see some of Porter Ingle's past and his flaws, but he is awesome, flaws and all. He and Barash separate to keep the peace between two warring cities, and Barash learns that there is basically a siege of Troy situation going on. A young prince married the princess of his enemy, and they fled to his city for safety. The other people are kind of using the whole thing as an excuse to attack and plunder the city for a rare resource it holds. They try to kill Porter to get him out of the way, which just makes him angry. In issue 4, he faces off against the mercenary forces while Barash learns that she was being manipulated by the prince and the princess. While she and Porter successfully end the siege, she no longer trusts her own intuition and takes a vow to not act on the behalf of the Jedi until she is certain she understands the will of the Force once again. It's what comes to be known as the Barash Vow, which first appeared in Charles Soule's Darth Vader run. I liked this series and I look forward to the next comic about Porter, The Broken Blade. The High Republic Adventures issue 3 was okay. I still don't think it's as good as the Phase 1 series. It's all around more lighthearted and funnier, which I like, I just don't know how this story fits in with the rest of Phase 2. The Jedi Padawan Sav is still with Maz Kanata's pirate crew as they attempt to steal their ship back from a dark side Force-using gang, and Sav plans to help by ramming the pirates with an Eviscerator, a ship we first heard about in the book Midnight Horizon. Star Wars issue 32 still has some strong connections back to the High Republic era. Luke and company are stuck near the Old Nile headquarters in no space along with the trapped civilians of the long-lost Kezerat convoy. But Chewie convinces them he can get everyone home if they just go back to get the Nile Path engine. They make their way over to the Great Hall in a Republic longbeam, which is super cool, and things go well until Luke tries to recover the ancient Jedi text he left on their ship. That's when a Nile droid crushes his lightsaber, apparently blowing it apart. So we might be heading toward that time where Luke needs a new green kyber crystal, which is exciting, but we'll have to wait and see how they get home first. Hidden Empire issue 4 was pretty awesome. This Kira trilogy has had some highs and lows, and I'm glad it appears the story will end on a high note. Kira still has the device called the Fermata Cage, which apparently has a Sith Lord trapped inside. To release them and set them against Palpatine, the cage needs to feed off of massive amounts of darkside energy, so they activate it at the Amaxine station from the High Republic. The Emperor can track the darkside ripples through the Force, so the Empire comes into conflict with Crimson Dawn's fleet there. Palpatine and Vader personally board the station to take down Kira, and they're flanked by Royal Guards and the Red TIE Interceptors, which is a nice nod back to the old Legends comics. Next month will be the final issue of the story, and I can't wait to see how it ends. Darth Vader issue 32 gave us Sabe's choice. She chose to side with Vader over the other handmaidens to stop Jewel Tambor from bombing a city full of refugees. Basically, she made a deal with the devil for the greater good, which, you know, always works out. She cleverly takes away Jewel Tambor's power and saves the lives of all the refugees. She achieved her goals alone, hoping that she would be the only one of her friends to lose her soul. But she does reject Vader at the end, I think. I'm not sure exactly what was happening in the final frames. I think the series was picking up steam the past few months, but now I'm a little confused. Anyway, Bounty Hunters issue 32 was really good. It took some time to dive into Zuckuss' past in a clever way while also bringing Inferno Squad into the mix as they attempt to hunt down Valance and the others. Basically, we learn that Zuckuss defeated a great monster on his homeworld instead of completing a specific ritual to become a Gand Findsman, which resulted in his exile. His family turned his back on him, and so he found a new one in Forlom and the rest of the Hunters. It really made me appreciate his pain when Forlom was reprogrammed during the War of the Bounty Hunters arc. The 10th and final issue of Han Solo and Chewbacca was satisfying, but I was disappointed only because I didn't realize it was the final issue until about a week before it came out. I enjoyed the series and its fun, pulpy adventure. Han recovers the neural core of the murderous droid revolutionary Ajax Sigma and buries it. Of course, we know it will eventually be recovered thanks to the Revelations comic from back in November. That would be the biggest canon implication from the series, but I expect we will see more from Corbus and Phaedra in future comics. Sana Staros issue 2 continued to be a fun time. It's refreshing having a comic series that is largely just doing its own thing. I'll miss Han Solo and Chewbacca, but Sana Staros is doing a good job of offering up a similar experience, and I really like seeing more of the Staros clan. They're still trying to recover an old family heirloom, and I was right that it was connected to the High Republic and Avon Staros. It appears to be crystal research that would probably help the Death Star's development, and they're going to get help from a familiar face, Diva Lompop, an old friend of Avon's that used to be a member of the Nile. Yoda issue 5 was enjoyable, building off the new arc that started last month. A Wookiee Jedi is having visions of an attack from a Trandoshan Jedi. Dooku insists that Yoda will not be willing to act on those visions, and for good reason, because he saw the Jedi Council ignore the visions of Sifo Dyas in the Dooku Jedi Lost audio drama. So I get where he's coming from, but Dooku's advice leads to the Wookiee bottling up his anxieties until they are unleashed, and he becomes the aggressor against the Trandoshan. It's an interesting flip on the way we usually see those two cultures interact. The JABBA'S Palace comic, as part of the new Return of the Jedi series of one-shots, was fun. It reminded me of the old Tales from Jabba's Palace book, or From a Certain Point of View, or other anthologies. This story was about Jabba's last interpreter droid that 3PO sees being tortured in the dungeons. There's nothing crazy in it, but I enjoyed it nonetheless. Hyperspace Stories issue 4 was probably my favorite issue of this series so far. I genuinely teared up. I liked that we got a 4-part story that spanned different eras of Star Wars, culminating in a truly sweet conclusion that saw a childhood toy return to a Wookiee who grew up without it, and that also served as a memory of her father. It was very moving. Not a ton to say about the canon, but I really liked it. And finally for comics, we had the 8th issue of The Mandalorian Season 1 adaptation, which, like the rest, was fine. It's episode 8 of the show, just faster. There's nothing new to report. Story of the month was a tough choice this time around. I loved the Keller and Beck scenes in The Mandalorian, but I think the Bad Batch episode The Outpost may have taken the top spot as my favorite story in the past few weeks. And that's it for March. In April, we're getting the final 3 episodes of Season 3 of The Mandalorian, 2 new High Republic books, 16 new comics assuming the schedule doesn't change, and finally the release of Star Wars Jedi Survivor, which I am so psyched to play. We should also get some exciting news from Star Wars Celebration London, and as you're watching this video, we will probably still be recovering from jet lag, but we're across the pond and ready to cover all the news. The Canon update will return on May 1st to cover all those new stories. Until then, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram, and consider checking out our Patreon page. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.